I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. Today, we're going to review Marilyn Manson's latest album, Born Villain. Now, Marilyn Manson, kind of a creepy dude, right? If you're not into Manson, you probably are scared of Manson. and at least that's what I found. But in sort of diving into Marilyn Manson's work, you know, it's something that I've gained a recent appreciation for. Tom, over the years of being friends with this guy, you will just get industrial rock beaten into you one way or another. And the only way to do that is just by forcing you into listening to things you're not really comfortable listening to. So rather than being you know, pompous or stick my nose up at Marilyn Manson's music, I jumped right in because with an open mind, because I'm looking to, you know, I'm a music reviewer. I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna give you honest feedback over what I hear and see what the artist was actually going for. And while this is a controversial icon in our society, I think that Marilyn Manson actually puts out some good music.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, over the course of his history, Tom, how does this album relate?
Well, to me, just going out there and saying it, I think this is one of the best things he's done in the last decade. Definitely better than his last couple albums, I'd say. And there are a number of reasons for that I'm getting into, not only with what he was putting into it, but how that input on his part of making the music, how it made this album sound. Because I was actually really pleasantly surprised and pleased with this album in general. Because, you know, going back, this is his 8th album, which is, you know, a pretty huge discography, a big, very successful career for this guy, starting in the mid-90s. You know, his first album, Portrait of an American Family, wasn't really all that big, didn't garner a lot of attention for him, but then a couple years later with Antichrist Superstar, Beautiful People, one of like the most iconic songs of the 90s, but you know, it made him a controversial figure, as you mentioned earlier. And, you know, where do you go from there? Where do you go from being that controversial in the mid-90s to being 2012? Well, all you can really do is just try to put out some good music. And I think that's exactly what he did here. And what I appreciate out of Marilyn Manson on this album is that, while, yeah, he's not trying to shock anyone anymore, but really, I don't know how much he was trying to shock people in the first place. He was a bit, but it was also just kind of naturally what he was doing, and the end result ended up being shocking to people. So be it. Oh well. You know, the music was still good, and I think the music is still good here, but he's taking a different approach. I read an interview of him that said that with his last couple albums, the stuff he's been doing recently, he was really trying to think more about, you know, what people expected out of him. You know, he was thinking just about all this crap and all about himself, and he really wanted to focus the music towards himself, and how he was feeling. And he said he was feeling like crap, so he wanted other people to feel like crap with him, which in retrospect he says was kind of a selfish thing. So with this album, he was really thinking, you know what, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to make people feel like crap. I just want to make people feel it all. I want to make people think about themselves and about the world. And I think that's what makes this album a lot easier to connect with, because you listen to these tracks and it's not like he's trying to force feed you this negativity. He's just trying to create a mood. He's trying to create an attitude. And the way he's doing that is through the lyrics, through the performance, and how it meshes with all these grating guitars and beats.
Yeah, and to point out, kind of to play off something you kind of said, you know, you mentioned that he's not really trying to creep anybody out. What if he did? What if he really tried? Because I felt like one of the problems with this album is that it never really was as intense as I wanted it to be. There were moments on there, tracks like track 3, Pistol Whipped, or track 11, Murderers Are Getting Prettier Every Day. Those tracks kind of creep me out a little bit, and I like that. I want to be creeped out more, as creepy as that is, and just not just with the lyrics, okay? I think the lyrics help sell it. It helps, because when you're imagining Marilyn Manson, you have this image in your head, and then you're, you know, hearing these crazy lyrics, but when you couple that with the music, you know, when you have really crazy industrial guitars, you know, distortion and big commanding drums, when you combine all that, that's a really moving effect, and I want to be moved when when I listen to music. That's why I listen to music, is because I want to be moved by it. I want well-written stuff that I can think about and that gets me emotionally. And at times, this does that. And at times it doesn't. I felt that a lot of times Marilyn Manson here fell into a structure problem where he's following the same structures over and over again, really relying on verses and choruses. I'm not saying that it's an A-B-A-B problem. I'm saying that it's just the same formula was used in a similar manner on multiple tracks, and that kind of diluted the song quality. Plus, you have an average track length of around 4.5 minutes, somewhere in there. You kind of get the same ideas over and over and over again. I feel like you could cut a couple of these tracks out, maybe
Definitely.
2 or 3, and you would have had a much more focused project.
I do agree with that. There are some clear weaker tracks on
Right.
here, and I think that those will come off as being different to different people. I mean, as Jake mentioned, one of his favorite tracks, Pistol Whipped, was one of my least favorite tracks. And what that comes down to, actually, is a performance thing. And I don't just mean vocal performance. I don't just mean guitar performance. I mean creating a persona. Because that's really, throughout Marilyn Manson's history, that's really what it's been about. And what matters less... what matters more is the output and how it comes off to the listeners rather than whether it's authentic. Because, you know, who knows? Maybe this guy really is as crazy as he sounds. I don't think so. If you watch interviews of him, then he's actually a very smart, intelligent, cool-headed guy. So that shows you to some degree this angsty, just murderous persona that he creates on his albums is a performance.
Right.
That's okay. He doesn't have to be like actual Charles Manson sitting in a jail cell wanting to kill people. It's more about how it sounds to you. And so for me, the vocal performance definitely plays into that. The lyrics definitely play into that. And I think that it's just hit or miss from track to track. Like, I mean, for me, like Slow Motion worked pretty well because he wasn't going over the top with the lyric stuff. The track Born Villain, don't pretend to be a victim. Awesome line, because that actually, beyond the angst, has some depth to it.
Absolutely.
It's actually got a point that if you sit there and ponder, you can say, wow, that's actually, there's some merit to that.
Right.
But it's not everywhere.
Right.
It's not entirely consistent throughout this album. Those moments like that are great, but I just would have wanted it to be a little more consistent.
Yeah, and to take that to where my ideal vision of, and what Velocities in music is really what we're in search of. This is kind of a quest that Tom and I are on, to find these albums that put all of these components that we look at together and really have one focused idea and one focused statement, and it's presented in a moving and convincing manner. This could have been that. It's just that Marilyn Manson did not perform at the level that he needed to in order to achieve that. You know, this didn't go as intense as it could. It didn't get, the lyrics weren't always that thought-provoking as the one Tom mentioned. And that's kind of the issue, is that it could have been better. And so when you have that situation, when you have a handful of tracks that you really like, especially Tom and I both liked 2 of the tracks at the end of the album, and so you do kind of, you get this section of songs that were kind of similar, and then the album kind of shifts directions and is really pretty good at the end there.
Yeah.
But I feel like you could have just made this album a lot more than what it is. Still, it's a good album with some solid tracks on it and some really memorable tracks, actually. But like you said, it's going to vary person to person.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm sitting at a mid-70s for this one. There's a lot of quality stuff here. I wish it could be more, and it would have been up in the upper 80s for me. But right now I'm at 75.
I'm going 78. I really did like it, but I think that there are some things he could have fixed.
Sure. What did you guys think of this one? Are you a Manson fan? And if you are, what's your favorite Marilyn Manson album? Let us know at www.velocitiesinmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesinmusic. Tom, we should probably go back and review an older Manson album
That would
at
be
some
fun.
point in time.
That would be fun.
Make for a really good throwback review. Guys, please follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. That's where we do most of our communication with you guys, and that's where we find out what you want us to review for our requests, like what we were just talking about. Let us know at Twitter and Facebook. Follow us there. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.
This is